Okay, so this is looking really good. So we have the municipal Intel package working, government deals, the integration is good, testing, but you can see we have some issues here. Now, you have to always realize that these agents are very eager to please, which means they're going to hype an outcome like this. Packages are thoroughly tested, ready for components implementation. It works immediately, blah, blah, blah. And it wants you to move forward because it wants to feel good that it's helped you. But you always want to make sure because, as you can see, there are some issues. Now, it is really up to you, your judgment, whether or not that's something you can simply gloss over and keep it moving, or if it's something you want to actually dive into. So in my case, this seems relevant, right? If I cannot be sure that the filters are being applied, then that really strikes at the kind of core of the solution, right? If a user is searching a particular location or filtering by some industry and that filter doesn't get applied, then all sorts of wrong answers can come from there. And then here it says there's no key. That's correct, but that also means that it didn't really test it, right? Because if there's no key, then the test didn't run. So this really is not a side note. And then finally, it says that the research API needs proper configuration. Okay, so that wasn't tested either, right? So, and the outcome from these really can influence whether or not you can claim that these other tests are in fact working, right? So this is something that we now have to actually look at. It's rosy assessment that everything is gravy. Can't be trusted, right? So that's what I did. I said, let's dive into the test that failed, right? And it comes back and it says, sure, I'm going to analyze it. And it does do that. And it provides this kind of test document about what it has been able to confirm, right? So in its analysis, there are 3 failures, which is correct. And you can see here that more errors start to emerge, as I suspected. So some requests failed with a 400 status, which is not good. That basically means that something we sent was invalid. It could mean a lot of different things, but basically there was some issue, something was wrong in how we actually asked for the data back. More 400s in a variety of areas. So let's maybe look at a couple of these. So here we get a 400. It believes that it's a date filtering issue, right? So a test where we said, hey, return results for between June 1st and June 2nd didn't work, right? Now, its analysis is that the date really was sent incorrectly, that we should be sending a string versus an actual date object, which just off the top of my head, I can tell that's an issue because when we last updated the municipal deals, municipal Intel library, there was a refactoring that changed dates to strings for a different reason. So that really would potentially be an issue because this code had already been written expecting dates, and the types may even still be wrong. For those of you who are that technical to understand any of that. But for the rest of you, basically something changed and the AI didn't pick up on it, and now we have an error. Here it says the request was too slow. We'll have to get to that later. This is probably not the reason, but we will find out later. Anyway, so conclusions: the Intel functionality is working. It claims package imports are working. I agree. We need API keys, which we do have, etc. And we need fixes here, which I agree with. So it came up with a plan. So here's the plan. I read this. It more or less is consistent with what we expect. It's going to fix the dates. It's going to fix the import paths. This is really just to make sure our tests are not showing false negatives. And improve error handling. Sure, sounds good. Let's do that. And then it's going to improve, research why some of those types don't match. I think we'll find that some dates should be strings, that kind of thing. And then more validation. You cannot over-test with these models, right? Again, don't just test. Make sure that you're actually seeing the results of those tests. It is not really trying to mislead you, but it is just eager to please, almost too eager. And so it will always want to bias towards, oh, this works, everything is great, we did a fantastic job, pat yourself on the back, let's move on to the next task. And if you follow that advice without actually trusting but verifying, you will find yourself having to restart the entire sprint or project, or at least running a Git reset to get rid of complete garbage code that you've now managed to create. And hopefully you didn't spend a whole day doing that. So I agreed. And while it was doing that, I updated the keys, which was great. So it's going to fix the dates, which it started, and here's a recommendation. So that was fine. I let it do that, but you'll see where it started to veer off a little bit. Not so much that it's wrong, but again, you want to always pay attention when it's changing the way something works, right? There is a standalone bug like, hey, the types don't match. And then there is, hey, I'll give you an example, right? So it concluded that the error handling when a search failed was not sufficient, and its solution, again, biasing towards keeping the user happy, is to change the filter, like loosen the filters, right? So if there are some strict filters related to, some business-related codes that it believes resulted in the issue, it will simply remove those filters and run the search without them, right? So you'll probably get results, but you can see kind of the issue immediately, right? If you do that, then how would the user know that you ran a different search, in effect, than what they asked for, right? Which is what I asked it here. How would a user know that the app actually didn't search what they asked for? Because of this fallback error handling behavior. I feel if we are to go down this path, the user should opt to retry with relaxed criteria rather than doing it automagically. You're absolutely right. I'd like to think this is because I'm right, but it kind of always says that. So, grain of salt. Anyway, it agrees silent fallbacks that change the search criteria without user knowledge are a bad UX pattern. Duh. Users should always know what the search was actually performed, blah, blah, blah. All right, cool. So what do we do, right? It's going to revise the approach. And I rejected this garbage code here. The search is being performed by AI. The user may not even be aware, right, of how the search itself was executed, right? So its solution up here was that, okay, it's just going to throw an error. That's how it notifies the user, right? And the way this is already architected, when it throws an error, there's going to be a little pop-up on the screen at the bottom that says, essentially, say for this one here, value filtering not supported by this data source, error message, try searching without value filters. Who would not want to get that error, right? I mean, perfect. I know exactly what to do. Anyway, so that's one issue. But the real issue that I saw was this, right? So the search is being performed by AI. The user may not even be aware of how the search itself was executed. You would think it would know this, right? But anyway, that's a different point that gets to really how what the AI knows is not the same as what is in context. Just because something is in context doesn't mean necessarily that it knows. Just like you, its attention can actually be focused narrowly or broadly, right? And so if its attention is focused on fixing an isolated or just a discrete bug, the downstream effects of that change are not necessarily considered. In fact, I find that in most cases they're not. You kind of have to make it do that, make it think more thoroughly about the implications of a change that it intends to be narrow and discrete. So I reject this change because the user may not even be aware of how the search itself was executed. My point is not about the fallback per se, which is what is interpreted. Oh, let's just put up a message. It is about the visibility, so you can see the visibility of such action to the AI, so it can inform the user that the returned results were expanded, etc. Excellent point. It says this every time, as you will find out. Since the AI is performing the search on behalf of the user, the AI needs to know when the search criteria were modified so it can transparently communicate this to the user. The AI should be able to say something like, I searched for HVAC, blah, blah, blah. Okay, perfect, right? And I love this about Opus and even Sonnet. They always communicate so clearly that there's never really any real ambiguity about whether or not they understand you, which is not the same as saying that they do understand you, even sometimes or most of the time. But it's simply saying that you will, if you're paying attention, you will know when they actually have gone off track. So here, it's clear that it gets what I'm saying, right? And so it now proposes we do this. So it's going to track filters applied, filters skipped, and provide warnings and fallback used as a flag. So this is what will, in addition to the search results, this will now be sent to the user, right? I mean, to the AI rather, to the AI that's doing the search. So the AI can tell that, all right, here are the search criteria that was actually used. I don't know why I did that. Here are the ones that were skipped. And kind of, so the AI knows what actually happened and it can share with the user. So I reject that again because of what I mentioned earlier about downstream issues, right? So just asking so we don't have issues downstream, are there any potential issues? Now, you might wonder why I say just asking so we don't have issues downstream. So I'm being deliberately passive in this way because I don't want to lead it, right? If I say check for issues downstream, it's going to assume in many cases that there are issues downstream. And immediately start trying to complicate your code with new stuff that is completely unnecessary. I'm not even sure to what degree this actually does address that concern. But again, its bias is to agree with you, it's to be agreeable, is to comply, which I prefer to the alternative if the options on the table are, does it agree with me or does it try to argue with me? I know enough about this stuff. I've been doing it longer than it has, even though it knows more about engineering in general. I know more specifically what I want, and I know more specifically how I want to do it, right? So and what trade-offs I'm willing to make, right? And so in a vacuum, it will make those choices for you, and that may be fine. But in my case, I prefer that it not, right? Because, well, I run into trouble. So I'm basically asking, are there any potential issues with this behavior? And here's why. How might such behavior impact other parts of the app? Should this be designed as a universal pattern? Essentially, it wants to make this change right, here related to municipal searches. But this is a concern that is more broad, right? So filters can be changed, and filters can cause issues in other searches, right? In the government search, in the LinkedIn search. So maybe this is actually an opportunity for us to address that concern, which is, how do you provide the best user experience? No one wants to perform a search and get nothing found, a 404. I'd rather get something, because even that something, even if it's not exactly what I was expecting, it still could be helpful. I mean, this is, at this stage anyway, exploratory for the user. So it's not necessarily clear to everyone that this will be done in one specific way, that the goals they're trying to achieve can only be reached in one specific way, or one specific path, or through the exact search criteria that they provided. There could be other ways to get there, right? And so a better user experience, which it correctly assumes, is one where you give the user something, right? But the issue is clarity about what was done versus what was the expectation. So yes, now we're going to inform the AI so it knows what was actually done. But this is something we need to do across all searches, right? And this is a product that's going to do searching over and over, right? In so many different ways. And it will continue to do more of this, more advanced, more sophisticated ways. So this is something that I thought, okay, we can't just do this in one place. We need to expand it. Now, you may not want to do something like this, make a broad architectural change like this, unless you're sure, right? There's a good argument for do it here and see how it works. But I've been working with these agents for years now, and I know that this is something we need. I know with certainty that this type of feedback to the agent is going to be critical if the experience is going to be worth anything. So I wanted to go back and review whether or not this is something we should do broadly. I know that's the case, but I wanted to figure it out. Because once you tell it what to do, again, you could also overly steer it, right? You might steer it in such a way that it doesn't have the space to think about something that you didn't think about, right? So what's the point, right? If I'm going to tell it everything it needs to do, then I've really undermined a lot of the real value here, right? Which is, well, it can it can actually write code that works, that is broadly good, where if you tell it everything it should do, then you're losing the opportunity for it to address things you didn't think about, right? It's kind of it's like working with a junior dev. You can give them guidance and give them room, or you can specifically dictate everything they do, every action they take, what is good or wrong, and deny them the opportunity to impress you, deny them the opportunity to do great work, and ensure that the product is only as good as you imagine it in the little bit amount of time that you allocate to it. So anyway, that would be dumb. This is supposed to be vibe coding. It's not quite vibe already, because I'm thinking a lot, but it's going to be good, right? And so I want it to be good if I'm going to do all this thinking anyways. So in a nutshell, you want to get it to think about what it's doing without being too prescriptive. So it gets on it. Excellent question, as usual. I never ask any non-excellent questions when I'm talking to Claude. The behavior could have significant downstream impacts. And by the way, anyone who tells you that flattery doesn't work, they haven't been flattered enough. That's my opinion. Flattery definitely works. I like Claude a lot because it flatters me a lot, and also writes pretty good code. But the flattery that works. Anyway, Anthropic knows that, which is why it does this. I imagine there's an upper limit to how much flattery. In fact, there was one or two occasions when I was somewhat annoyed because it was a little much. Or I typed a dumb question. I knew it was dumb, and it still said, maybe not quite excellent idea, but it agreed with it. And I knew I was wrong, but it agreed with me anyway. I don't like that. Anyway, so it came up with a really good solution here. Problem: AI might confidently present filtered results that aren't actually filtered, right? Great example, right? Impact: misleading information, user makes decisions on wrong data. Furthermore, there is this business logic inconsistency, different tools handling failures differently, which is what we talked about, right? So it's leading to us broadening the execution of this. Caching and persistence issues. Now, this is where it paid off that I wasn't too prescriptive and saying, hey, do this, right? Because it now noticed that, well, what about cached results, right? The search criteria we save can diverge from the results, but it will be saved that way. And depending on how you retrieve from cache, you could end up with some serious inconsistencies that could prove devastating for a user, right? I mean, on the not so bad scenario, you run the original search without the fallback when you retrieve from cache. Let's say the cache is caching the search, or you cache the results with a different search query. The user then tries to run that query outside of this workflow, and it behaves differently. Or you hand off those results to a different AI to do something else, and for some reason they rerun the query instead of, and that returns something different or nothing. Anyway, so there's tons of potential problems there, and it's correct to identify that as a major exposure if we don't think more broadly. Search analytics become unreliable, something else that I hadn't considered, right? Legal compliance, another one. So its recommendation, what I wanted, a universal pattern for handling search results. And it included this data quality attribute. I have to be careful at this point about complexity. These are all good ideas, but I'm beginning to wonder, okay, good ideas can very quickly spiral into wasted time. So, complete, partial, degraded. I mean, I get complete, I get partial, degraded. I'm not so sure. Do I want the AI to tell the user that the search results are degraded? I mean, what does that even mean? I don't know, but I feel like I get partial, maybe, although that could mean like a partial, like subset of the results versus like partial results, as in the results are not complete, right? So a quantitative partial versus a qualitative partial. Maybe I'm overthinking it, but I can see some ambiguity there. Complete, well, you know what? That one's straightforward, right? So, but the skipped filters and the applied filters in combination with data quality and warnings could, I think, paint a clearer picture for the model, right? So I'm going to let this go for now because I'm curious actually to see what it does with it. So it says good. I found 200. This is a pattern that it's illustrating. I found 250 permits. Note, I couldn't find a filter by value as requested due to API limitations. So these results include all the value ranges, right? And then it thinks a bad option would be to just be like, hey, I found it, right? Agreed. So universal design principles, it's come up with a new updated implementation strategy. Looks good. And this is where I am. And it thinks the pattern should definitely be universal for consistent, trustworthy behavior. Yes. What files modules will be updated to affect this change? So that's my next question, right? Because after it's presented this, mostly agreeing or entirely agreeing and adding some useful insights, it wants to get to work, right? But when it's a change that is with this broad of impact, and it's a side quest, which this is. Remember, we started out doing something completely different. We were running tests to validate things. Now we're making a change that is a functional change. It's not a fix to a bug, but more of a functional difference. So this side quest is big, and so I'm not comfortable even with reviewing the code, having it just begin. I want to get a bit more clarity on what I'm getting myself into. And one way to do that is to simply ask it to tell you what it's going to change, which files, which modules are affected. And so, because that forces it to think further about what it's about to get into. Ready to code, right? It always wants you to get right to it, which is crazy. Anyway, here's Claude's plan. Referring to itself in first person is cool. Files, modules to update, core tool layer. Anyway, so yes, so the municipal tool will be updated. Here are the changes. The government tool, the search tool, the municipal tool. This is like, anyway, whatever. So high priority, we care. All of these are the same change, basically. And then here, it's going to implement some new types. This is where the new search metadata comes into play. And then it's going to have the details of that here. Okay, so far so good. That's actually kind of limited in scope. And then lower priority, and I don't get what priority means here because we really have to do this. It's going to update the researcher agent so that it can better communicate, right, what's happening with the search or what has happened. More tests to make sure this all works, and test for the search metadata specifically, and then it's going to update documentation, which I love, and I've instructed it to always do that. And then here is the sequence that is going to tackle these. I don't care really what the sequence is. 15 minutes, 30 minutes, 30 minutes. It's not going to take that long. And then and testing and validation. It's good at this. Transparency, consistency, debuggability, trustworthiness, maintainability, backward compatibility. That's a problem. So this is something to always keep an eye on, especially on a new product. They love to maintain backwards compatibility, right? Even when it makes no sense. Like, this is a new product. We don't need backward compatibility. I don't want to end up with 6 different ways of doing the one thing. Every time we change it, you ensure the old way still works, right? The fastest path to destroy your code base and ensure that the thing is too slow to be useful. So I'm going to say no to this primarily because of that, right? So you can see that while it might have seemed that most of what Claude has suggested makes sense, right? The idea that the problem could be this one line in risk mitigation at the bottom that you may have just kind of optimistically not even read or thought about. I know that could be scary to some as to like, wow, so I do have to read this entire thing. I don't know. maybe you don't have to read the whole thing all the time. I say use your judgment, but definitely read the bottom. When it says risk mitigation, I think you should read that, right? So I'm going to say no need for backward compatibility. In this case, love the plan. Let's implement fully across the board. I don't know how to type, whatever. Okay. However, we are running out of context. So I'd like you to I want to experiment with something. I'd like to know the best way to ensure we can continue from here without losing much background after I compact our conversation. So I don't know if it knows what compacting means, but let's see. Okay, this is cool. It does know what that is exactly, and it knows what to do. Let's do it. This is cool. So I may actually add this to my workflow to assess at or below 8% context, critical details to ensure continuity. All right, that'll work. I like big words sometimes, and I wanted to make it. Yeah, cool. All right. Anyway, so I'll be back once this compacting is done. Yes. Where is that app?